Hi, I'm Sebastian Stute, a co-founder of Smartmakers, and we are an asset tracking specialist. So today I want to talk about the pitfalls which you want to avoid in your LoRaWAN asset tracking projects. So there's a lot to speak about. Let's go. Let's briefly introduce us as a company. So we are on a mission to accelerate business processes using IoT technologies. We were founded in 2016 and with a team of over 20 IoT experts. We got 250 customers all over the world, and today around 500 active users are using our ThingsHub tracking and remote monitoring platform. As you can see on the right, we got a few really interesting customers over the past years where asset tracking and remote monitoring were the use cases which we developed for them. And like in the past 5 years, we built around 100 private LoRaWAN networks for cities, industry parks, and communities. So the lessons I'd like to show you today came from different type of tracking projects. So there were a few larger projects with car dealerships which have different sites and require to find their cars faster. But also there were a lot of tracking projects where an automotive supplier wanted to track his load carriers through their different sites, and so these were the projects we were doing for them, and most of the pitfalls that we will present now come from these projects. So pitfall number one, the network itself. We really have to say, to reduce complexity in the later on troubleshooting, it is very important that the local network that will be installed, or the global one that you are using, is absolutely reliable. So main pitfalls here is that we still see customers and partners and people from the ecosystem speaking about a one gateway installation, and we would say that's definitely not the way that you should go. You always should at least have 2 gateways being installed on the place where the tracking use case will happen. Better having a few ones, which bring me to the next point, which is an extensive network planning. So I'll give you an example for the car dealership, which had 18 sites. It required really a lot of effort to build up the network over the different sites because we needed to do extensive network planning. We needed to speak to their IT departments and see where gateways could be installed, where the local network is available, what positions for the gateway would make sense. And all of this should not be underestimated. It really have to work finally, and we did a lot of network testing to confirm that really the network is working everywhere and is working as reliable as it was required for this use case. We moved away from gateways being connected with SIM cards because of the complexity the cellular connection can also bring into this whole application, and this is the stuff we learned around the network. Deploying thousands of asset trackers is very much different from just deploying a few hundreds. Another lessons we learned when the projects ramped up after the POCs have been finished. The POCs typically were a few hundred tracking devices, which we could manually more or less onboard onto the platform and then get the configuration done. But as soon as like the larger pallets of tracking devices, a few thousand or even 10,000 devices arrived, we really needed to speak with the client about what is the onboarding process, who's responsible for which part of the onboarding process, how can we bring the devices from their factory setting into the required use case setting, which was, to be very honest, not an easy part. Because looking, for example, to the Abbey asset trackers, it required at least us to send the configuration to the trackers, which required 5 or 6 downlinks per device. And so we needed to split the devices into different like configuration packages so that we can finally use the available gateway capacity to do the configuration of the devices. And then when the devices were in the testing runs, so in the first like few days, we intensively also monitored how the devices behave, because we noticed and have been speaking also to our partners here that a few of the devices could have like hardware defects from the production. And so this was really what we wanted to prevent, so that none of the defective trackers will really go into the operation. And so we had some dashboards which found like devices that were just like not working properly from how they were configured, to see if they stay in a motion tracking all the time and not coming to a start-stop behavior. And finally we ended up with having like, I think 2% of really defect units where like the GPS or something on the PCB was not working, which is from our point of view an exceptional quality with the manufacturer we work together, but that is something that you have to keep in mind. To indoor tracking, so indoor tracking works well, at least after doing all the required work, but even for us it was like a big finding after a few of the projects that like bringing out the Bluetooth infrastructure into the buildings, into all of the sites was a lot of effort and required even some tooling. And the photo you see, I'd like to explain a little bit. The example that I took here is you see that the hall in the background, and we started in the winter time to bring in all the BLE infrastructure into this hall and measured it and confirmed everything was working. And in the winter it was clearly cold, so the door that you see open right now was closed all the time. And when we started with like operating, or the customer started operating the application, he came back and reported to us that we had some mispositionings around this area, and we were analyzing this problem, and then finally found out that because of the summertime, when it was very hot, the people in the workshop, they had the garage door open all the time, and so the BLE infrastructure, the BLE signals went out of the building onto the parking place, and so we had some indoor positioning instead of outdoor positionings. And it's just one example which is easy to understand, but what is something that is now definitely on our checklist for when we do the installations, to see if there are any building, how can I say that, building doors or building garages that will stay open or behave in a different way in different times of the year. So bringing out all this BLE infrastructure is really something that you need to plan, and that you need typically software tooling for, so that you can confirm to your customer that this is really working when the application is productive. For the GPS data, I think everyone who is a little bit aware of how GPS work know that like GPS has the pattern of being influenced by building, being influenced by the isosphere and other aspects, and so that like positioning is changing over the day, and you have some mispositionings. On all of this need to be handled with care to finally come up with a position that is precise enough so that your customer is really satisfied with the result. So it took us a little bit of time to implement the algorithms and implement the mechanics or mechanical functions to really get the good results our customer typically expect. And if you also look to the picture here, you see a parking place in front of a very large wall, which was an aluminum wall. And the aluminum wall was typically reflecting like the signals from the tracking devices. And you see on the screenshot from our tracking platform that the little label drawn onto the map is the one that where the car is. It is the BMW in the picture above, and the one with the dot and the circle around is the one that the system initially with the raw GPS position has been announcing as the position of the car. And this is definitely not acceptable, at least not from our customers. So after the corrections have been done, this is now really working very well. But you need to be aware that like raw GPS will not bring you to the solution that typical customers expect. One tip here is we focus really on just a few devices now to take all the experience we have with all these devices, and we can just suggest this to all of you to really focus on one or two devices, gain experience and over the use cases, and then see how this will all work for you. Pitfall number 5 is the operation of a critical tracking application, which definitely does not have to be underestimated. So from the customer experiences we have so far, many end customers do not have any in-house expertise to operate the IoT application. So our initial thought was also that when we bring up enough self-service functionality, we can give the whole application to the customer, and the customer can operate it itself, which is finally not the case. So the customer typically expect us as the experts for IoT or our partners to operate the application, and having itself not so much competence on their team, except the one that we trained to them. So this is a very important part. Plan enough training so that the customer know how the system work, where are the limits of a system, what the customer can expect for the system. So it is really a project that you need to be very careful with your customer and see how this will explain how it can work and what it can achieve. Think about the quality of the tracking devices, because if you have just a bug in the firmware of the tracking devices, it can mean at the end that you have 1,000 bugs in your application. And so also updating 1,000 devices is nothing that is easy to do and just a little of effort. So really test before the application go live. Look that everything is scaling as it should, and see how you finally can do an efficient troubleshooting, because as you are aware of, the complexity of all the components, or the network, the devices, the location engine, all of this need to really reliably work together to finally allow you to come up with the tracking applications your customer is searching for. Long-term ROI, and another important part, and the last one I'd like to present today is, so we also initially started with using a lot of the localization services, cloud services that are available today from Google, Here.com and Mapbox. And we noticed, especially after the first, I would say 15, 20 projects, that these services really can become very costly. And so we decided for a few of the services that we were implementing more caching mechanisms, or implementing some of the core functionalities within our own platform. So Wi-Fi or BLE triangulation, or sites and zones and geofence mapping is now all implemented within our own platform, because finally we say the cost point, or point what the customer is able or willing to pay, need to be achieved, and to finally make this happen, it is very important to look on the costs. Saving money on the tracking devices can quickly pay off if the quality from the vendors is not fitting to the expectations. Everyone's announcing or doing marketing and telling the customers the devices will hold for 5 to 10 years. And so you need to be aware of that. Finally, the customer will definitely ask for that and see that everything is working for that time. And at least here in Germany, you also give a little guarantee, something like a warranty or guarantee, so that this the customer can finally send you the devices and tell you, okay, this is not working, you need to replace it. Cost. So efficiency in the installation, in the rollout, is also something that we think is very critical for a successful tracking project. So days and weeks of installing BLE infrastructure, measuring and testing can become quickly very costly, and so you need sophisticated software tools and soft and hardware tooling to get this done in an efficient way. The rollout and maintenance of devices need to be planned forehand, so that it's guaranteed, it's guaranteed to the customer that finally the devices will operate and will be maintained over their life span, and this is something that we think is very important. So last but not least, what we want where we can help is with our product ThingSub tracking and monitoring platform. So a platform that allows to really with advanced and very major functionality roll out tracking and monitoring use cases in days, or probably a few weeks instead of really months and years. and we support most of the leading manufacturers from the tracking side, and we support local and global use cases. So you can connect the platform to like all LoRa network servers, TTI or Lorio or Curlink, or the networks from Orange, Swisscom and others. And you can easily then build up the use case. We got some tooling around the platform which will help you installing the BLE infrastructure. You can build very advanced dashboards to analyze further the mechanisms or present custom specific informations to your customer. Our device management is definitely state of the art. So we support like bulk editing for nearly everything. You can import hundreds of devices with a few clicks. You can get these devices from their factory setting into your application setting, and the monitoring functionalities which were implemented help you really operate the large fleets of devices. So thank you very much for listening to that. I hope, or we hope, this helped you in doing your own asset tracking projects. We definitely look forward to have a conversation with you. No matter if you just write us an email or give us a call or just go into the live session, which will start after lunch. So enjoy your lunch and see you later.